Thank you very much for the kind invitation, Dr. Julian, of the International Institute of Social Studies at The Hague for this talk arrangement. I would like to talk about the food system and production changes in the last 50 years in Bhutan. And I like to begin by first showing you a screen that has calculated or estimated the amount of cereals the country is now importing. It has steadily risen from the past, and now the main cereal imported, which is rice, has reached almost 4 billion. Likewise, the value of things like dairy products, meat, cooking oil has steadily risen over the decades. Now, this is not only cereals and meat and cooking oil, which has increased. Imports have increased, but vegetables like potatoes, potato is exported but also imported depending on the season in Bhutan, because there are no good storage facilities for potato, and there are no good processing food industries for potato. That is why this strange phenomena of exporting in summer and importing in winter take place. And tomatoes, onions, cabbages, lettuce, chilies, and lentil, etc., are also imported in large numbers. And the latest trade statistics that's available is for 2023. And I have estimated the top 10 imports. And that top 10 imports for Bhutan in 2023 also includes rice. It's the fifth top import commodity. And then cooking oil is the sort of 10th food commodity imported into Bhutan, valued at nearly 1.2 billion. So Bhutanese farmers export apple, oranges, cardamom, ginger, etc. But the rest of the things are imported. Now, I would like to come straight to the main reasons why this is happening in the country. And in spite of the major production increase programs launched by the government for the last 50 years or so. In recent years, the government of Bhutan has installed all over the country electrical fencing in order to ward off wild animals' intrusion into crops. In the face of labor cost shooting up and thus constraining the farming sector, as well as to reduce the labor input into tilling, mechanization of farming has been a steady program. So on the right side of this slide, you can see people using power tillers, Kubota power tillers imported from Japan and now from Vietnam, to cut down the hardship of plowing. But I'm also showing this application of modern machinery to plowing and tilling in a distance, because the distribution or the number of such machinery is comparatively low. So they are not everyday machines you will find in front of a farming household. For a long time, government of Bhutan has been, of course, opening farm roads all over the country in order to make marketing easier, as well as transportation for farmers much easier. And on the right side, you will see terraces. So the sort of consolidation of irrigational channel has also been a long-standing program in the country in order to increase the productivity of the farmers, and in order also to make intensive farming possible. But irrigation channel by nature is more suitable if the command area is large, and construction of irrigation channel is easy, and that happens to be the case where the gradient of the farming land is very low. So I was discussing about the various ways and means by which the government of Bhutan is trying to boost the agriculture and livestock output of the ordinary households. So they have not yet succeeded in overall increasing the livestock population or the acreage in totality I'm talking about. The main thing that is being done is through yield increases or the productivity of the livestock, although the number is going down, in various ways, through irrigation, varietal promotion, fencing, electric fencing, farm roads, marketing, packaging, food processing, etc. But one of the impressive program is actually to augment or increase the land holding of the farmers. Although I have mentioned that I will mention later on that there has also been, through legislation, tendencies in the opposite direction, that is to say, withdrawal of land through land ceiling, cancellation of the Sweden cultivation or shifting cultivation land, or withdrawal of pasture land and soxing, etc. So this unusual program is really associated with the initiative of His Majesty the King, who by constitution has the right to grant land as well as citizenship. So in this capacity, His Majesty the King has been distributing land to those who have very little land, that means marginal farmers, or those who, due to the reproduction and proliferation of family members across generations, have become landless. So really it is an empowering mechanism at a fundamental level. This is known as land kidu in the country, and the amount that has been done so far is quite impressive. The record keeping, since it started in his reign, started only in 2010. Of course, there were some land gift even before that in his reign, but we know that from the records since 2010 that a total of 138,000 acres of land has been given to some 131,000 individuals. So that means each person who has been privileged to get the land grant has on average received 1 acre. So this is the records between 2010 and October 2019. So a huge amount of land has been given. Some of it is so-called excess land, which is being reverted back to the owners, but some of it is original land, original gift in that sense. So the amount is significant, and one would not know the significance of this grant in the last 10 years or so, unless we know the total acreage under agriculture. The total acreage under agriculture noted in 2019 is about 250,000 acres, 250,000 acres. Now, this already includes, of course, the land granted also. But we do not know how to match these numbers fully. So in the land gift almost amounts to close to 50% of the total land acre. So this is, in this sense, very amazing. It also is amazing in the sense that the average land holding of a Bhutanese is median landholding is only 2.67 acres. 2.67 acres median landholding. Average is a little higher, 3.76. So this talks about these two figure. You can say, suggest skewed distribution a little bit. So if the average landholding is 3.76 and median is 2.67, and His Majesty has given away almost 1 acre to each individual, that means almost every household in the country has received some sort of land grant or the other. And the royal intent behind this is also equally far-sighted. In his proclamation, His Majesty has said that he would not like to see any landless person in the country as long as you are in the rural areas. So this has been the most significant way of restoring agricultural land back to farming and increasing production. And then, of course, in the livestock sector, the improvement of breed has been a major activity. And you can see the distribution of the distribution of cattle population in the 2017-18 census, it shows that about 18% of the cattle population are of improved breed, or so-called improved cattle. These are cross breeds, especially Jersey cross breeds. And yeah, the upper curve shows the native or the indigenous cattle population, and this curve shows the component or the percentage of the cattle population, here shown in absolute numbers. So by 2017, when the livestock and farming census took place, there were about 50,000. So so this has been the main thrust of the livestock and farming increase. In the cropping sector, one major initiative launched by the government was varietal introduction. So introducing crop varieties of higher yield, such as Japonica rice, such as Yangtze maize, better potato varieties, better fruit trees, etc. But if we take a overall view across time of the last 50 years, the dominant picture you get is not of increasing output, increasing acreage in the country under farming, nor we get a picture of increasing livestock numbers and increasing livestock output. Very contrasting picture you get. And that is one of declining cattle population, one of declining agricultural acreage, and one of declining agricultural output, which is rather concerning because of the fact that still some 46% of the workforce of the country is engaged in farming and livestock sector. So here you see the total labor force of the country's percentage distribution, and almost 60% of the male labor force is in the agriculture sector, and 34% of the female labor force is in the agriculture sector. Of course, the reason why the female active labor force in the agriculture is 34%, much lower than almost half of male, is that they are included, they are active in villages, but as food processors rather than farmers. Now, there is a distinction between that, and so the classification leads them to this kind of discrepancy. They are housewives, they are cooks, they are nurturing children, they are supporting dependents, elderly as well as children, but they are still in rural areas. So overall is that picture is that it is the most important sector from point of view of engagement of labor. Now, labor is not simply labor as we understand in economics. It is also a major way of living and finding meaning in life. So a huge proportion of Bhutanese people are still farmers in one way or the other. As I said, on 46%, but the output is going down. The acreage is going down. And so my presentation today is first going to show why it is going down, and then offer some reason for this downward trend. First, I would like to show a graph which shows the pattern of labor engagement in agriculture by sub-activities such as manuring, planting or sowing or broadcasting seeds, transplanting seeds, weeding cycle, clearing and cutting of bushes, burning of dried material, etc. These are intricate subcomponents of farming. So if you, in order to understand farming, we have to know these various cycles involved in the cultivation of paddy, wheat, maize, millet, buckwheat, and barley shown above. I focus on maize, buckwheat, millet to draw your attention to the fact that these were three most important crops in the past. So if they are not being cultivated or cultivated in far lesser extent today, output will fall. In fact, we can make a good argument that millet was probably a forgotten but major, probably the most important crop for the Bhutanese people, as it is known as mindre, the cereal of the Mon people, i.e. the Bhutanese in the past. And I like to draw your attention to the fact that the early linguistic studies done by Sydney University tend to show that buckwheat might have been domesticated in somewhere in Bhutan. So that is a interesting crop domestication in the world that the Bhutanese people might have contributed in their own innovative way. So now the first reason what I want to show is related to the livestock population. The livestock population and livestock farming in a traditional organic farming is intertwined with crop farming. So if one of them, like the animal livestock farming or livestock population, goes down, it would have a negative impact on crop cultivation. And it brings to the fore the relationship between the two of them. The decline in livestock population would mean two things. One, it would mean that the shortage of draft animal, this is oxen to or zo or jatsa to pull your plow and break the soil, that would go down, and that would affect farming. The second, far more crucial thing is that the farmyard manure amount would go down. And this is a critical input. We may underestimate this today in urban and bureaucratic setting, but farms in Bhutan, through the livestock, recycle forest into nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And if this link is broken, then agriculture or a farming sector would also suffer. So this is increasingly taking place in Bhutan. Here you see such a huge pile of farmyard manure being dug and transported to the field in the past. So I have already shown how livestock population has declined steadily, very steadily. You can see this trend. And there are, as I will come later on, specific reasons why livestock population might be going down. It may be associated with the idea of sedentarization, meaning that livestock population and migratory pasture land are no longer together, meaning livestock has to be prevented from migrating over long distance because the pasture or the right to graze on the forest floor across districts has been prevented by 2007 Land Act, which has withdrawn it and nationalized or prohibited since then. So that's the first reason. The second reason for the decline in output of their main cereals is really the weakening of the communal institutions of labor exchange. In the past, the agriculture was extensive rather than intensive because the institutions supported or the customary law supported such things like rishing, pangshing, and seri, and it was extensive, meaning that the cultivated area was higher, but they were not cultivated every year. Every few years, the peripheral land would be cultivated. And that means that the labor required to bring those land under cultivation had to be much more. Now, the size of the labor is fixed. The only way you can increase this is through collective labor mobilization. So, labor exchange and communal farming, cooperative farming developed. And there were very marvelous customs of labor exchange and labor reciprocity in the past for planting, for harvesting, for irrigational channel maintenance and construction, and of also communal cooperation for maintaining a vigil over ripening fields. This is really a joint policing action to protect the farms from wildlife intrusion. So as I said, the cooperative farming through labor exchange extended to many things such as sowing, planting, harvesting, and also here you can see people bringing dugout logs in order to connect water flow over cliffs with this wooden channel. And I mentioned about the joint policing of the perimeter of farmlands through communal labor exchange. They built platforms to guard crops from wildlife. And this is best done, of course, with cooperation. Here you will see the whole community coming together to plant millet in eastern Bhutan. Now, so this is the second reason, the breakdown of the communal institution, or rather weakening communal institution in many places, but breakdown in some places. The third reason for decline in output is the reduction in the land area under cultivation. Land area under cultivation in the past was much greater, and those who were born after 1980s will no longer remember this, because these lands have gone under the forest completely. So it's very difficult to imagine now. But those of us who come from earlier decades know this very well. And of course, those who are older than people like us had been practically involved in such kind of extensive farming. So here you see shifting cultivation site of a village, Tongseng, in eastern Bhutan, in Kotte region, Lhunchi. So the present day farming is limited to this area, but in the past they used to cultivate this entire site under millet, under shifting cultivation, or rather, to be very precise, it was bush fallow cultivation, not shifting cultivation. These are two different things. Shifting cultivation means going all over the forest. That was not the case at all in Bhutan. What we had done in the country in the past was Sweden bush fallow cultivation. So the land was always the same. It is the same location, but for a year or two, they would be allowed to rest. The land would be allowed to rest and regenerate, and then you go back to the same place to cultivate. So visually, you can see that in the past, the surface area cultivated of this particular village, Tongseng, was about 5 times. So that is no longer the case. So the output would fall. Now I show a shifting cultivation site, or the bush fallow cultivation site in Decheling, in Samdejongkar, and all these plots here, the light green part, where the spots where maize was planted in the past under bush fallow cultivation system. This is now no longer the case. All they cultivate is around their village, Decheling here. So once again, you can see the contraction in the acreage in order to explain the fall in output. Now, the third instance I show here is that the case of Tangsibi village in Bhutan. They cultivate this area now, wheat, buckwheat, and some barley. But 50 years ago, they used to cultivate this part too. So almost twice the size of the village was under cultivation in the past. So when the acreage shrinks by so much, if any yield increase is achieved through modern technological input, that the Ministry of Agriculture has been trying hard, you cannot completely offset the fall in output. See, we can notice the trend clearly from official agricultural census between 2000, 2009, and 2018. This is the Ministry of Agriculture's own statistics. So here you see area under cultivation in acres. And you can see decline in wheat. The green one is for 2018. So you can see the decline under wheat, decline under barley, decline under paddy cultivation, decline under maize cultivation, decline under buckwheat cultivation, as well as decrease or decline under millet. So the surface area under cultivation is getting smaller and smaller for various reasons, as proven by the evidence produced by the Ministry of Agriculture itself. So we have seen the acreage shrink. Let's see now the output. So output naturally is correspondingly also decreasing. So the yield increases achieved in some of these crops, which is the basic approach of the government to increase yield, will not make much difference or doesn't make huge difference in the broader picture of decline. You can see wheat output has declined, barley output has declined, paddy output has declined, maize output has declined in metric tons. All these are measured in metric tons. So, maize from in 2000, we used to produce 77,000 metric tons, and now we produce only 31,000 metric tons. So in 20 years, it has fallen more than half times. Rice, it has fallen also. It has fallen also from 68,000 metric tons in 2000 to 33 metric tons in 2018. So all crops output is declining, and this is a rather serious problem, in my opinion. Very serious problem. So the not only the agricultural census conducted by the Ministry of Agriculture, but other sources also confirm the decline in surface area under agriculture. So you can see here that the Department of Forest's land use planning project show agriculture acreage to be something like nearly 8,80,000 acres. And if you believe in the LCPM 2010 statistics, it has declined to 2,77,000 acres. Now, this is unbelievable decline in modernization. This is kind of going in the opposite direction, So the estimates of how much land has gone down, how much land under agriculture had gone down in percentage term is given here. In 1883, land under cultivation was 8.8, and by 2010, according to this government statistics, land under agriculture has come down to 2.9%. 2.9%. It has declined more than half, whereas the population has increased or gone in the opposite direction. So the discrepancy would emerge, and this would be filled up by imports, which we have already seen, the evidence of which we have seen, the rise in agriculture imports. So this brings me to the fourth reason behind all this decline. And behind all this decline, one of the major fact causing this is the legislative changes that has triggered land use changes in one way or the other. the laws that has been influencing landhood in the country goes back to the 1979 Land Act, which had further deeper origin in the National Assembly and the Timshung Chembo and so on. The trend has been building since then, but it came to a clear conclusion in 1979 Land Act, which imposed a land ceiling of 25 acres per household, I would like to say. So, and that Land Act also, I think, sowed the seeds of gradually removing shifting cultivation. So it was shifting cultivation was simultaneously discouraged, banned, and excess land in well, in the case of shifting cultivation land, it was whether it was excess or not, it was also withdrawn. So this agricultural land ceiling meant that those who could have potentially becoming big farmers could not do so, even though the technology becomes available. If your land holding is very small, there is no reason for you to invest further in it because you don't need a tractor to plow 2 acres. You don't need heavy machinery or complex organization for marketing, production, etc. If your output is just several bags of rice or maize. So the scale question is important, and we know from many global studies that whenever there is this kind of reduction in the scale of farm, on average, I'm saying, it imparts a downward trend on the growth of agriculture. So land ceiling imposed by 1979 Land Act, which was further renewed in 2007 Land Act. Is interestingly, the land ceiling is not imposed in the case of legal persons such as industries This is very interesting. It is a form of capitalism that you impose land ceiling on agriculture, but not on industries. So you favor in this way gradually the industrialization or marketization or capitalism in one way, but not the traditional population and the farming, which is the first major occupation of mankind and history, which is close to nature. So I'm not saying this with any bias, but this is a fact of law, and it's also a fact that it has imparted certain kind of influence on the country's agricultural system. But the 2007 Land Act further went in further in curtailing the use of land by the farmers and livestock farmers. So one was the further restriction on the ownership and use of sokshin in our country, which was an ancient institution. And in fact, it was one of the most ancient forest conservation institution. I regret its withdrawal because a lot of sokshins have been destroyed since then, as we know, because the ownership protection is not there. So that further sort of discouraged, because you do not have a secure source of leaf litter for your manure purposes. And one profound effect, whether it is negative or positive, we shall have to wait history to judge. But the withdrawal of the Samdo land by the government from all livestock managers, except the yak herders, meant gradually the separation of migratory cattle and the diminishment of the migratory cattle population, which depended on this kind of pastures through migrations, access through migration. This was withdrawn. So generally, it means that there is a pressure on all these cattle to be brought, population to be brought to an end, and along with the sustainable dairy production will also come to an end. Now, we must remember that the Bhutanese farmers do not hold much land, so it would be very difficult to hold a significant livestock population while at the same time because the land then have to be devoted for two purposes, for fodder as well as for cereal. You can't do both if you have very little amount of land anyway. So we can see the effect of this legislative change over time, and here you see I particularly prefer to show these pictures, but this is the only one I have, which tracks the temporal regeneration of forest due to the legislative changes. The forest line has been coming down since 1979, when the first photo was shot, and the last one 2010. And I think this can be generalized for the whole country. There is gain, obviously, in terms of timber, but loss in terms of livestock and livestock raising and agriculture. Now, how you can measure the value of these two opposite activity is a much bigger task to be done. But I think probably I must emphasize, on balance, the loss in terms of livestock and farming is much greater than the gain in forestry. Now, the fifth reason is again associated with the expansion of the forest. Fifth reason is that, as you all know, our country, Bhutan, 50% of the country is now under nature reserve. And as I have said, purely from a conservation perspective, which is a very big thing in the world today, in the face of loss of biodiversity and climate change, it is a big commitment on the part of Bhutan. But that needs to be made known through rigorous academic exercise, not through political or not through rhetoric, but through main academic work. How this plays a significant role in the world or benefits needs to be made known, because it is quite a cost to the Bhutanese people's livelihood. But anyway, I show this thing to underline the commitment of the Bhutanese people to conservation, because their farms are being surrounded by forest gradually, and in the forest, of course, live and should live lots of wild animals. But the wild animals, if the crop area is shrinking and there are no edible things in the forest, then there will be intrusion into the cropping area, and that has been a rising problem in the country, and no good it should not be considered conflict. Conflicts are accidents, you see. Conflicts are risk. But here you know the consequence, you know the effect. So it ought to be well planned, not through a vigorous culling or killing exercise, which is against Buddhism. But some way has to be found for softening the impact of these things, wildlife on the farming. So a significant number of farmers report loss of livestock to big cats like this one, or loss of crops to elephants in southern Bhutan, and yaks and other livestock to snow leopards or other kind of predators, wolf, for example. So the number of people who say or who claim, now, of course, this needs to be validated further, but the first thing is to believe people, as they say. Otherwise, why do you ever take surveys if you don't believe people? So they say that they are negatively affected by wildlife, and the proportion of households who claim this negative effect is astonishing and believable too. You see, in Tashiang says 61% of the farm household say that they are affected by wildlife negatively, whereas in Thimphu only about 5%. So there is a huge gradient. The intensity or the incidence of the wildlife effect is very high for those districts which are surrounded by tropical forest. And when we asked the households, so what species of wild animals affect them, and they are wild boar, monkey, who are closest to us in terms of evolution and neural networks, who have some degree of sentience, like human beings, porcupine, deer, and bear. And so again, they are all these animals and crops and forests are a web, a web. A web means that one is depending on the other. So you cannot take out one part and solve say that is the solution, because the sort of deer or pig may be food for tiger and leopard, and culling them would affect. Of course, we are not contemplating whatsoever, but even theoretically, culling them would affect the predator population. So they are in a chain, they are in a web, and one depends on the other, while pig also depends to some extent on the food of the farmers. So, but the loss is not only in terms of crop. Loss is also in terms of livestock, and further, the loss is in terms of time of the farmers, time taken to guard the farm population, the crops at night. So on the whole, there is another problem connected to the decline in crop output and crop acreage. And that is the last reason I want to highlight. The sixth and the last major reason for the decline in output and output of crops, and thereby changes in food habit because of the import, is the farm labor shortage in livestock and farming. Now, there are two reasons for this, two major reasons. One is that the overall in the country, as you all know, the population size has gone down, arising from the reduction in the size of the household. So the times when a couple used to have 7, 8 children, this is in Kangpara in 1986, and this is in Sakting in 1986. And the times like this are gone. Now most of the rural houses have just 4 or 5 people. So the household size have declined severely in the country, and overall you can see paradoxical thing that household in Thimphu and little more urbanized places are bigger than households in deep rural areas. In Tashigang, Pemagasel, where you think the counterintuitive situation would exist, we actually think that there would be more members in a household in these places, Mongar, Tashiangse. In fact, the size of the household over there is much lower than in Bumtang, Paro, Thimphu, etc. So that is the reduction in the population, which is causing shortage of labor for agriculture, and thereby decline in cultivating land, and thereby causing fall in output. Now, I think here too there is a big lesson. I think in the 70s and 80s we went on an overdrive on population reduction. And also simultaneously this concern that the country will be overpopulated because the thinking was linear. They forgot to think of outmigration in hindsight. It should have been taught, because inevitably as the country open up, there's always out-migration as well as in-migration. The demographic effect of education was forgotten. Demographic effect of urbanization was forgotten. So we were doing linear thinking, and that caused some sort of overdrive in family planning in the past. And we can now see the result, which is quite unexpected, with low population growth, below replacement rate. And the second reason is that even though population, let's say hypothetically, it did not decline, it would have been very difficult if migration at the rate we envisage had taken place. So the people from agricultural places such as eastern, central, and western Bhutan, southern Bhutan, are all migrating to western Bhutan, where agricultural land is not actually extensive. So that is a very, again, a contradictory process if you want to maintain output and acreage. And in the past 20 years, for which we have good data on migration, evidence is uncontroversial that people are moving to Western Bhutan in significant numbers. So now we have reached a situation where 20% of the land area of Western Bhutan is hosting 45% of the population, and this trend is going up and up and up. So these are the 6 major reasons why the agriculture as a whole and livestock as a whole is going down quite precipitously, and hope there is some attention. Some are quite easy to fix, some are very difficult sociological and economic processes, but some, like legislation, is quite easy, and they are the as we see that a lot of changes brought about in the country in these two sectors began with legislative changes and demographic changes. Demographic changes are a bit difficult to change, but legislative ones are quite easy. So hope there is some attention, because now we see this overall economic impact. That is, and that and the large part of Bhutanese labor force shown here, 46% of labor force is engaged in agriculture, but the amount of money, amount of income, or roughly we can even say amount of profit made per year from every crop and livestock is quite small, quite small. I show the absolute amount and I show the relative amount. In absolute terms, about 27 billion Nultram worth of profit or income, let's say roughly, is made per year from these two sectors. Now, keep in mind, 46% of the labor force is engaged. 46%. So this labor size and their families are dependent on this income. That means, in relative terms, the income of the agriculture sector is going to be, per capita income is going to be quite low. Now, so much of labor is involved in this sector, but from GDP points of view, only about 7-8% of the GDP is being derived from livestock and agriculture. So that means agriculture and livestock is contributing only about 12% of the GDP, which under any circumstance you might think is quite low. So we are faced with major challenges looking towards the future, because if you want to raise the income of this labor force from 46%, you have to either shift them from agriculture to services and industries where they can make money. But that brings us further problem. That is, you have to all the time import food, and that is not good from many points of view, including nature. The idea that livestock, farming, and nature conservation is unified as a web is deeply intrinsic to Buddhism, Buddhist culture, and indigenous worldview, the worldview that existed in Bhutan even before things like Buddhism came. This is some of the evidence you can see from our third religion, which is the spirituality connected to Neda, Shida, Zen, Gyalpo, propitiation, and offering for prosperity of human beings and fecundity of livestock. So I conclude my brief presentation on this issue today. I hope it has been somewhat useful. Thank you very much.